Chapter 11. They want our world and they want it now. It must be remembered that except for those Djinn who are in between dimensional rifts, the majority of this ancient race exists in another reality very close to our world. According to recent theories in theoretical physics, this other reality is located at a right angle to a right angle from any position that we are facing. Thus, we three-dimensional beings would not be able to turn and look into that area of space. This is because as we move, that area of space also moves with us, and so we can never move fast enough to peer into this other reality. The only possible way this could be achieved is to bend space itself, or perhaps move faster than the speed of light. For centuries, the Djinn seem to have been quiet. Only in the past 40 or so years have they once again become more active in our world. There could be a variety of reasons and explanations as to why the Djinn are increasing their activity in this reality. The theory that makes the most sense to us and could explain why the appearance of Djinn in this world is cyclic is that they are composed of plasma and are greatly affected by changes in magnetic fields. They seem to avoid intense magnetic fields and appear irritated when in close proximity to devices that might be able to divert, disrupt or slightly change the polarity of plasma. For centuries, the magnetic field of our planet may have protected us from the Djinn by closing off their reality from us. Recently, scientists have discovered that Earth's magnetic field changes over a period of time. Since the 19th century, its strength has decreased by 10%. Due to this decline, areas of negative magnetic anomalies have increased, creating loops or portals through which the Djinn can once again enter our world. It must be further noted that our sun is very quiet despite the fact that we are in a period of maximum solar flare activity. The peak of solar activity is set for 2012, and solar astronomers at Kitt Peak National Observatory expect or fear that the sun may make up for its inactivity and balance itself out. Well, I got a funny feeling, I'm not an expert, that the sun has been quite active recently. Let's not forget this book was written in 2011. So this would result in massive solar flares and coronal emissions. Well, we're having that. That's what we're having at the moment. That's me talking. The particles and energy reaching Earth would strike our magnetic... That's why we're getting... We went all the way to Norway to see the bloody Northern Lights. Oh, 2 weeks later, oh, they're in Glastonbury. They're all over the place. They're like literally all over the place. No? You can see the Northern Lights. This would result in massive solar flares and coronal emissions. The particles and energy reaching Earth would strike our magnetic field and weaken it considerably, causing life on our planet to be subjected to intense solar radiation. The weakening of the magnetic fields may be what the Djinn are waiting for so they can safely enter our dimension by coming through vortexes or holes in our planet's natural defence shields. The legends about the Djinn returning to take back what they believe is rightfully theirs may not be all fairy tales and amusing stories from ancient Arabian mythology. They may in fact contain a considerable amount of truth. If our suspicions are correct, in the years that follow 2012, we should continue to see an increase in paranormal activity and a great change in our perception of what we consider to be reality. I'll stop interjecting, but I think we know that's happening. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm reading this out, because I feel that this is happening, and this book literally tells us what it is. Return of the Djinn. As we progress further into the 21st century, the Djinn race are once again manifesting in our world after a long absence. In the past, they have appeared as human-like genies, angels, demons, gargoyles, and other mythological creatures. However, this time they are taking the form of UFOs, aliens, fairies, ghosts, spirits, shadow people. I got a little bit loud then, sorry. This is the nub of it? The crux of it. I only said the nux of it. Sorry for interrupting, but this is why I'm spending all these hours reading these out for you guys, because this is now, and this is what we're seeing. Portals and UFOs and God knows what else. Anyway, I'll start that again. However, this time they are taking the form of UFOs, aliens, fairies, ghosts, spirits, shadow people, and creatures that seem out of time and place. They may be responsible for a great deal of channeling, visions, and other forms of psychic contact. It is evident from our research that the Jinn are intensely interested in the current human condition and want to learn more about the technologies we have developed over the past century. They also appear to need human beings and other life forms in this reality to help them make the transition into our world. Perhaps the many stories of aliens from other worlds that are creating hybrid species in order to live on our planet are not merely the tales of over-imaginative people's minds or flights of fancy. The aliens from other star systems may actually be dimensional beings trying to create a new race, a sentient race with free will that can exist not only in our reality but also the world of the Jinn. Like Bilquis, the Queen of Sheba, such a race would be quite formidable, as they would combine the power of the Jinn with the aggressive creative mind of a human. Judging from the increase in paranormal activity around the world, it is apparent that the Jinn are not restricted to the Middle East. Over the past 10 years, we have investigated many claims of haunted homes and other places, and it is clear that in a fair percentage of these cases, something else is at work rather than or in addition to ghosts. The activity in many of these places is more trickster-like, which has always been an identifying Jinn quality. In some cases, people have been driven from their homes by activity that takes a sudden malevolent turn. This paranormal activity may include disembodied voices in the night, apparitions of human-like beings or monsters, strange lights and flashes, poltergeist activity, missing objects, electrical malfunctions in the home, shadow people and figures, nightmares, especially of hideous creatures. I literally had one of those the other night. Oh, I'm getting all involved in this chapter, aren't I? And adverse animal reactions. Dogs and cats seem to be able to sense and perhaps see a jinni that is invisible to the human eye, which always induces fear in the animal. In addition, humans who live or spend a lot of time in environments occupied by jinn may experience harmful health symptoms that defy medical diagnosis, as well as negative psychological effects such as depression, suicidal thoughts, irritability, aggression, and excessive paranoia. In some cases, married couples begin fighting with each other and may even separate. This is how the jinn work. If they can't scare the people out, they may resort to trying to turn couples and family members against each other. In the Middle East, couples will often go to religious counsellors when they are having difficulty, since they feel a jinni is trying to break up their marriage. Phil has concentrated his research in the northeast United States, while Rosemary has conducted investigations in other states and foreign countries. When we compare notes and findings, many cases bear striking similarities. The experiences mentioned earlier seem to provide a foundation for understanding the relationship between humans and jinn. We now consider the possibility of jinn in our paranormal investigations and encourage other investigators to venture beyond their conventional explanations of ghosts, poltergeists, ETs, demons, and supernatural creatures. Jinn are everywhere, sometimes hiding in plain sight. The following are a few cases we believe involve jinn. Skinwalker Ranch. A ranch in Utah became famous in paranormal circles. The Skinwalker Ranch, named after one of the dominant phenomena said to command the area. So much negative activity occurred there that owners left and sold it to the National Institute for Discovery Science. The story of NIDS investigations at the ranch is documented in Hunt for the Skinwalker 2004 by Colm A. Kelleher, former Deputy Administrator of NIDS, and George Knapp, a broadcast journalist. We stress that the interpretation of jinn is our own and is not made in the book. In Native American lore, skinwalkers are evil, shape-shifting sorcerers who travel about very rapidly, especially at night. They cause illnesses, incite people to violence, rob graves, and can even kill people. The ranch is situated on land in the Uinta Basin, an area renowned for supernatural lore and activity. The ranch is said to violate skinwalker pathways, making it a particularly unlucky place. Locals either avoid speaking of skinwalkers or talk about them in hushed tones so as not to attract unwanted attention. We believe skinwalkers may actually be jinn in disguise. Their activities and powers fit the descriptions, and humans fear them in the same ways. There's a little side note. NIDS was created by real estate developer Robert Bigelow of Las Vegas in 1995 as a privately funded organisation to scientifically investigate UFO and paranormal phenomena and to advance fringe science. It was discontinued in 2004. NIDS involved teams of scientists and researchers. Activity witnessed at the ranch includes intense poltergeist activities, strange orbs of light that seem to possess intelligence, supernatural bulletproof wolves, dark entities, mutilated cattle and missing animals, large black triangular objects in the sky, other UFO activities, crafts or objects that glide around and land on the property, and sightings of men in black. One of the most peculiar sightings was of an orange mass that repeatedly appeared in the western sky, seemingly a window into another reality. One night, the mass appeared in the night-time sky, and Tom, the pseudonym of the ranch owner who sold the property to NIDS, looked at it through the telescope. In the middle of an orange mass, Tom could see what looked to him like another sky. Through the magnifying scope, he distinctly saw a blue sky, like it was a window into somewhere else where it was still daylight. Tom felt like it could have been a tear or rent in the sky about a mile away, and through the rent he could see a different world, or perhaps a different time. It was night time as he gazed through, and it was daytime on the other side. He began to think that the strange events on the ranch might be explained in terms of different dimensions, alternate realities and such. Flying, fast-moving objects, including one described as black in colour, were observed emerging from this hole in the sky. Tom became convinced that his ranch was a site of some kind of dimensional doorway through which a flying object entered and may even exited this reality. On another occasion at night, one of the NIDS investigators witnessed a yellow light manifest on the property, which turned into a tunnel. A large black humanoid creature about 6 foot tall, with no facial features, crawled out of the tunnel and walked away. The tunnel shrank and disappeared, leaving behind a pungent smell of sulphur. The creature resembles descriptions of shadow people, and sulphur could indicate its origin as subterranean, a preferred Djinn dwelling place. It seems the investigator, like Tom, observed an actual interdimensional opening, as though an unknown intelligence had thrown open a door in order to access our world. The NIDS investigators witnessed other phenomena, but were never able to capture any of it on camera, due to mysterious malfunctions and destruction of equipment. It seemed as though whatever was causing the phenomena played a cat-and-mouse game with them, another hallmark of Djinn. Some of the investigators experienced health issues while at the ranch, such as intense migraine headaches, which also is characteristic of Djinn. After several years of investigation, NIDS had very little physical evidence of anomalous phenomena, at least no physical evidence that could be considered proof of anything. This was in spite of hundreds of days of human monitoring and several years of camera surveillance. The investigation was officially ended, but we do not doubt that phenomena there and in the area continue. The ranch and surrounding environs sit on a negative magnetic anomaly, according to US Geological Survey maps. As mentioned previously, negative magnetic anomalies are often found in paranormal hotspots. The Sunlu Valley. Similar activity occurs in the Sunlu, I don't know if it's Lu or Louis, Luis Valley, another hotspot, the world's largest alpine valley stretching from approximately Villa Grove in southern Colorado to Taos in northern New Mexico. Since 1989, researcher Christopher O'Brien has investigated more than 1,000 reports of unusual activity, including UFOs and mysterious lights, cattle and animal mutilations, ghosts and hauntings, mysterious creatures and hitchhikers, shapeshifters and skinwalkers, evidence of alleged underground bases, and encounters with devilish or Djinn-like entities. O'Brien received a report of a Djinn-like encounter from the police chief in Cuesta, New Mexico, or Cuesta. In 1993, the police chief's uncle was driving home late one night north of Cuesta, heading south on Highway 522. He saw a woman dressed in fancy red evening clothes walking alongside the road, and so he stopped to offer her a ride. She got into the pickup truck and said nothing, only staring straight ahead. The uncle turned to ask her why she was walking along the road by herself so late at night, and got a shock. She had goat's legs and cloven hooves. Before he could react, she vanished right before his eyes. The police chief's story is reminiscent of the tale of the half-Djinn Bilquis, the Queen of Sheba, reputed to have donkey legs or extremely hairy legs and feet. The phantom hitchhiker is a common phenomenon found everywhere in the world. It is often tied to ghost lore concerning a tragic death. A female was spotted walking along a usually lonely road late at night. She accepts a ride and sometimes communicates where her home is. She always vanishes from the vehicle. These mystery hitchhikers do not seem dangerous or harmful, so perhaps the shock they give those who try to help is the payoff. Mothman or Djinn. In an earlier chapter, we discussed the possibility of Djinn involvement in the Mothman wave of sightings in the 1960s. West Virginia is an active state from a paranormal perspective, and the Appalachians are full of strange lore and stories about the supernatural. Some of the more remote mountains and hollows may provide ideal places for Djinn to exist with little human interference. We have seen how fiercely territorial the Djinn can be, and that when disturbed they can react with great hostility. They can reside quietly in a dimensional intersection location for long periods of time, but if stepped on, they put on a display of power. Every year, Rosemary attends the annual Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where she gives presentations, conducts investigations, and mingles with festival goers. In 2009, she met a West Virginia resident who told her about a frightening paranormal experience he had in the field of his own farm with an invisible but palpable entity. Robert, not his real name, was inclined to interpret the entity as Mothman, but with due respect to Robert, we think a Djinni may be a closer fit. As we noted previously, Mothman might have been a shape-shifted Djinni. Interpreting paranormal experiences is often highly subjective, much like dream interpretation. People arrive at an explanation that makes sense to them. Robert's terrifying encounter began with a series of lower-key, unusual phenomena in the early 1990s. He and his wife would be in states of deep meditation and absentee healing inside their farm home when the sounds of something heavy walking on the roof would creak. Hold on, I'm going to read that whole sentence again. Didn't make sense. He and his wife would be in states of deep meditation and absentee healing inside their farm home when the sounds of something heavy walking on the roof would creak the ceiling. Robert had an intuitive feeling that he was being warned off from going outside to investigate when these episodes occurred. One night he and his wife had friends visiting. He stepped outside alone to enjoy the fine night air. It was quite dark outside. Suddenly he became aware of an invisible presence standing on the ground about 10 to 15 feet away from him. The thing had faintly glowing red eyes, maybe 3 times as large as mine, spaced 3 times as wide. They were elongated, meaning perhaps twice as wide as they were high. They emitted a faint, almost infrared glow, which was in itself a bit frightening. The being must have been about 7.5 feet tall. I could not determine its shape or size, but it seemed massive. Robert rushed back inside, but did not say anything so as not to alarm his wife and friends. Although the presence was unsettling, he did not detect any bad vibes from it. 2 years later, he experienced what he later described as the most frightening and stressful experience of his life. He was in the habit of going way out into his rear field on summer nights and bedding down in a sleeping bag beneath the stars. He took along his dog Tanya and a .38 revolver, I don't know how they say it, with him in case he encountered any rowdy dogs. The nights were usually peaceful, and sometimes he saw UFO activity. On this night, however, things took a much different turn. Robert was almost asleep when he was woken up by a ringing thump sound in the ground. He recognised it as a deer warning. When the deer are alarmed, they strike the ground with their hooves, and it creates a ringing sound that other deer pick up. Robert heard the sounds of the deer very swiftly moving away from his vicinity. Immediately his senses went on high alert. Suddenly a strange and intensely strong energy hit Robert's body, unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was painful and penetrating and terrified him. It resembled a massive psychic attack, but hundreds times more powerful. I tried to reduce the effects on me, but my best efforts had no effect on the energy experienced or the physical, psychic or emotional damage effects. I tried in vain to counter the attack. This was the most alien feeling in my life, and it filled me with unreasoning terror beyond anything I had experienced or even imagined. I believe it might paralyse an average person. Tanya went unconscious, and the batteries in his flashlight went dead. Robert felt the source of the attack was about 50 to 100 metres distant from him and about 20 degrees up from the horizon. He was unable to see any form or shape. For 4 to 5 hours, Robert sat tensely, trying to ward off the attack, holding his revolver, knowing the gun was not enough for whatever was out there in the darkness. He forced himself to perform mental exercises that would ease his fright and stress. The malevolent energy maintained a constant, nearly intolerable level, and he felt a genuine physical attack could happen at any moment. Then, when the first streaks of dawn lit the sky, the energy vanished as abruptly as it had started, and he was relieved when Tanya came to. That night was the last Robert ever slept outdoors. He also reported suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder for years. What attacked him? Perhaps Robert's land is inhabited by a jinni who stays in the outer reaches where it is seldom disturbed. His excursions to sleep out in the field may have finally irritated the jinni, who regarded him as a squatter or home invader. It made a show of force as a way of scaring him away. The farm. We have been working on a case since early 2009 which involves a wide variety of phenomena, much like Skinwalker Ranch, the San Luis Valley and the Hudson River Valley. We are unable to disclose the location because the property is privately owned, but it is a typical farm in a rural area. The surrounding region has been known for UFO activity, sightings of mysterious creatures and hauntings. There is a small house on the property. The land was farmed in the 19th century. In the late 20th century, it sat idle for about 20 years, and several years ago was purchased and turned into an active property again. We do not know if previous owners experienced anything unusual on the property. Since farming resumed there, paranormal activity has been experienced almost daily. Phenomena include apparitions of people believed to be previous occupants during the farm's earlier days, mysterious creatures such as an imp with a leathery cat-like face that looks into a window of the house, the little grey scurrying things we described in an earlier chapter, menacing shadow people, a mole-like creature that attempts to burrow into human bodies, poltergeist effects, malfunctions of household and farm equipment, and the landline telephone, footsteps in parts of the house where no one is present, and a shape-shifting black blob that races about in a field. The employers who work on the property often feel an invisible but hostile presence inside the house and on the land that gives them the impression that they are not welcomed and should leave. Rosemary put together a team of investigators that has conducted numerous investigations on the farm, indoors and outdoors, including all-night surveillances. Team members collectively have experienced all of the above phenomena. Some of the staff and all of the investigators, except for Rosemary, have suffered adverse health problems. Rosemary has had an unusual degree of car problems. Phenomena have followed some of those involved to their homes. Rosemary has experienced apports of coins at her home. Pennies, nickels and dimes. An apport is where something just like comes out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden this penny will just like fly at you from nowhere. Since commencing the investigations, The apports are the sort of trickster phenomena one might expect from an entity that likes to switch from serious activity to pranks. People involved with the case, including Rosemary, have had nighttime entity visits in which an unpleasant and predatory presence enters the room. The entity, we believe it is a single one and not multiple, goes through periods of high activity followed by periods of low activity or dormancy. It especially acts up in advance of a planned investigation, as though it is aware and tries to scare any investigators away. We believe this land is occupied by a jinni who may have been on the land long before people ever arrived there. It was enjoying solitude until the farm was reactivated several years ago. It is clearly displeased with the disturbances and reacts by creating the phenomena. Will it ever go away? Probably not. It obviously does not like to be investigated or examined. Every investigation has been accompanied by a marked increase in and severity of activity. It seems to like to remind the people there that it is a boss. A Native American tactic to appease spirits was performed, an offering of ceremonial tobacco sprinkled around the house and property and burned in a small cauldron. The tobacco offering was followed by a decrease in activity, but not a cessation. It is difficult to assess the long-term potential danger for humans in cases such as these. Where unpleasant paranormal activity is continuous, people either learn to tolerate it or they become worn down and leave. I was here first. A medium we know who works in paranormal investigations was called to an odd case in the eastern part of the country. The site was a home in which a family was experiencing escalating unpleasant activity. The other investigators were convinced a demon was to blame, and they were ready to arrange for a religious exorcism. Anne, not a real name, offered to try to communicate with the entity to assess the situation. When she mentally tuned in, she was surprised the energy did not feel like a demon or a ghost, or anything she was familiar with. The entity seemed ancient, almost primeval. It explained to her that the house was located on its turf. It had been present long before humans arrived. The Native Americans understood its territorial rights and had honoured it and left it alone. But the white settlers who came in built on its land and created irritating disturbances. The entity said it owned 1 square mile. For reasons that were not clear, it was acting up now. Perhaps it had acted up in the past as well with previous residents, or perhaps there was something particular about the present occupants that the entity especially did not like. It communicated to Anne that it was providing a warning to the people in the house. It wanted them out. The entity also said that there was nothing the people could do to kill or destroy it. An exorcism would not work. However, it said, Anne herself might be able to send it away, and only to certain locations on the earth. Images sprang into her mind. One was somewhere in Africa. These locations seemed to have some sort of elevator in them, in that there was access up and down from the surface of the earth to below the surface. Due to a number of circumstances, Anne wound up removing herself from the case. The fates of the entity and the people in the house are not known. This case also has characteristics of Djinn, an ancient entity that preceded humans on the planet. Is territorial and is powerful enough to resist most attempts to send it away. The images of the certain places on Earth seem like interdimensional portals with subterranean access, a favoured place of the Djinn. Severely haunted homes. Nearly every paranormal investigation group has one or more cases that fit the following profile. A family moves into a house, usually priced at below market value, and soon experiences unpleasant phenomena that escalate in intensity. Phenomena include mysterious sounds and footsteps, shadows and shadow figures, black dogs and cats, hideous shapes, poltergeist activity, electrical problems, nightmares, apparitions of people and hooded figures, unexplained illnesses, unexplained accidents that injure the occupants of the house, tensions and arguments, bad luck and more. Sometimes research reveals that the house has a documented history of paranormal activity, bad luck, accidents, an unusual number of deaths in the house, and so on. The usual approach of paranormal groups is to bring in a psychic or a priest who declares that the house is haunted by a demon or an elemental, a type of low-level spirit that exists in nature. Religious exorcism rituals, blessings and prayers are performed. The paranormal activity diminishes or ceases, but not for long. Eventually it returns. Weeks, months, even years may pass before it does. Meanwhile, if the house changes ownership, the sensitivity to the phenomena varies. Some people are more vulnerable than others. Some of these cases may indeed be caused by infesting demons, but in persistent cases, the occupying entity may be a jinni. The house may sit in a portal area, which is not likely to close, especially upon the religious commands of people. Dealing with jinn has little to do with good people versus evil spirits. Rather, the conflict is racial, humans versus jinn. In closing, we believe there are many places all over the planet where jinn have a strong presence. We are re-evaluating cases in our files, and we find many that fit a jinn profile. In some cases, jinn may create mild haunting phenomena, and in others, they may make life quite miserable for humans. Conventional exorcisms against demons, elementals, and ghosts will not work on them, for they are far more powerful than humans. If they retreat, it is their own volition. For example, a jinni can masquerade as a demon or any other kind of entity and pretend to be exorcised, just to go into hiding and reappear at a later time. Perhaps this might explain some of the more resistant possession cases. Some jinn are not interested in peaceful coexistence. As an analogy, if your home is invaded by ants or rodents, you do not care how nice the invaders think they are or that they want to share space with you. You want them out. This attitude is how many jinn regard humans, as pests. A frequent refrain in negative hauntings is an entity's warning. Get out. When the jinn say it, they mean it. Right, the next one is called Human Jinn Contact. Is it possible? So, chapter 12 next.